Yeah, so thank you everybody for being here today. I want to introduce Brian Kane. He's a retired decorated detective from the city of Covington, Kentucky. And he's going to talk to us about strategic decision-making during an investigation. Brian, why don't you go ahead and say a little bit more?
Yeah, so I started in police work in 1994 as a Campbell County deputy sheriff. It was a part-time job. I usually don't include that because I was just a glorified mailman, essentially. I just sent serving subpoenas and whatnot. But it gave me an introduction to that kind of career, that world. My father was a police officer for about 30 years. So when I started full time in like 1996, he was retiring. It was an interesting transition because I knew my dad was a police officer, obviously, but I never knew his world. He kept the gutter in the gutter and the sidewalk in the sidewalk. So when I joined, everyone would know my name, last name, Kane, Kne, and they knew my father, and it was quite an introduction to how well he was known and how well he was regarded. So anyhow, that started my career, and I had a pretty active career. I did it for almost 27 years, 14 and a half years in the SWAT team. I was joined the detective bureau, was a detective and a detective sergeant for about 12 years. So basically, I've seen a lot of death and I've seen a lot of death and destruction like that. But no, this is a good way to I guess if I'm going to remember my career in this, this is a good way to do it. It's in a more positive setting, and this is and kind of what I've done of how it is if you want to write. I was part of you're going to enter into that world. The fugitive task force, and that's all we did was go and try to find wanted felons. That was one of my earlier forays into investigation type work. And Ernest Hemingway has stated this very clearly. This is truly how I feel now that I'm in retirement and I have a different life now. So what I have for you is just kind of a basic how do you start an investigation in a crime scene. And as I go through this, it's I originally I don't want you to think of it as a step-by-step process. Think of it as something that's fluid, because that's how it happens. So first off, a crime scene, when you get to it, is chaotic. There is a lot of there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of people in it, and as a detective, you're going to get called in after the fact because they've made these calls up the chain of command to get you there. So you're going to be called out, say 2 in the morning, whatever, and you're going to be stepping into this chaos, and you're going to try to start wrangling it to make sense of it. So any crime scene, if you're thinking of how you're writing a crime scene, it is not orderly at all. You have to bring order to it so that you can start looking at it in a manner where it starts making sense to you. That what clues, what physical evidence, what circumstantial evidence, what witnesses you have, and so on and so forth. You have to start moving in that direction fairly quickly. The show 48 Hours, a homicide show, that reality show, I think that's on A&E. The whole precept of the 48 hours is absolutely true. If you don't get your first 48 hours are your window opportunity to try to make sense of whatever violence or whatever, whatever this situation is. And and if you get past that, it's you just, I don't know why, I don't know what it is, but you need to get there fast. You need to get to the sort of the truth of the kernel of the matter, or develop a suspect fairly quickly, because as time goes by, it just gets more and more disordered. You know, what information I'm getting, I'm giving information, or people know information, and it's getting spread and spread and spread and spread. So I have to try to get ahead of that. Now, also, so a good deal of my dealings with homicides and the felonious assaults and stuff deal with a certain geographical the socioeconomic status. And so there's a great deal of pressure oftentimes to get ahead of this, because there's going to be retaliation. And then you're just going to be chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. So yes, the first 48 hours is absolutely a true introspection into what I did for so long. So when I say factual analysis, it's a nice term. What does that mean? Well, it's not clearly defined. It emphasizes possibilities and probabilities. So you take physical evidence, you take your own prior experience, you take investigative findings, and you try to develop viable suspect or suspects. And the other thing you do is that you identify and classify witnesses, whether they're first-person witnesses, after-the-fact witnesses. So you get these folks to add into your story, and I say that because I know you're writers, and that is essentially, what's the story? What happened here? How did this occur? So there's three questions that I always ask myself when I step into that crime scene: why here? Why this person? And why now? And I just keep running through that. Now, later on, you'll go through the who, what, why, when, how, so on and so forth. And then there's another question is, am I right? Am I correct? And you run back through it again. You're constantly, like a scientist, you're constantly testing your theories. So this is how you start developing investigative strategies. Now, this methodology that I've sort of come up with, and have been kind of taught on some levels, it roots out bias, it roots out hunches, it roots out conjecture. It is simply what's when I was a sergeant and kind of helping run the detective bureau, and that we would have newer detectives, and I would always tell them, when you come back here, there is no, you might polish your theory into a round, nice peg, but you will not hammer it into a square hole. You are not going to make your theory form to the facts. The facts is what you're going to is going to lead you. So originally I wrote this slide here as a 1, 2, 3, 4. I decided not to, because, as I said, I want you to look at this as a shifting scale. As we go through these, each thing applies to, let's say, whatever story, whatever your imagination is, like on whatever the crime scene or whatever the whodunit that you're thinking of. You're going to think from, probably, no doubt, the suspect, the victim, and then think about witnesses and sub-witnesses, just small characters in this that brings the texture of, the reality that you're trying to capture. So, your first one is obviously opportunity and access. Um, could the person do this? I mean, is it possible? Your next one is attitude. Now that we'll get into that, and with motivation, we'll get into that. Biographical information is very important because we don't all live the same life. We share different stratas in society. Race has comes into this. Sex and gender comes into this. You know, how I view the world as a man who stands at 6'4" is definitely different than Mickey does, who's a female and stands at 5'4". You know, there's different perspectives. So what I've learned is that I get thrust into people's lives, and on the worst day of their life, and I have to take them as they come to me. I have to take the victims as they come to me. I have to take the suspects as they come to me. I have to take the witnesses as they come. And they're not perfect. There's a lot. You know, I might have to be pulling them out of a bar. You know, they might be just a little bit drunk. There's issues there, right? But I mean, if I'm thinking of this correctly, as what it is that you're trying to create, it's what I did. It's what I did. Is they're imperfect, they're frustrating, but you take them as it is because life matters. Life matters, and whether you just got gunned down on 300 block of East 13th Street, or whether you're dead in your own house, we need to figure out how that happened. It matters. So these things here help me come to an understanding of what has occurred. So the first one obviously is, does the suspect have opportunity, and does he have to be, or he or she have to be physically present to commit the crime? Well, normally, yes, you would, even if like in this case B, where you would utilize a timing device as an arson, or an inserted malware as in data sharing or data sabotage, you're going to have to be there at some point in time. Now, the other one is could you have hired or arranged someone to commit the crime? But you wouldn't have to be necessarily present, but at some point in time, you're going to have to be present with the person who's done this. So there's a linkage there. So we still have opportunity. We still have access here. Does the suspect have an alibi? An alibi is simply, I didn't do it. And here's the reasons why I didn't do it. Because I was somewhere else, because I was with another person. Now that other person becomes an alibi witness. As I said, this is how you start classifying what your witnesses are. So then now I'm going to start thinking, well, if this is your alibi witness, what's your relationship? Can I believe you? How do you tell the story? How do you, if the person I'm talking to sounds, I didn't do this, and he gives a straight line story, and then you give the straight line story, and it's just hemmed in in guardrails, like there's no contours to it. As I said, each of us come at life a little bit differently, in a different perspective. There should be some change there naturally. So another question is, does a suspect have physical evidence purporting to show innocence, like a photograph, his phone, so on and so forth? And then you have to ask yourself, well, who was in control of that? He was. So am I being led down a story, another story? Like you're just I want to get back to what happened. What's the real truth? Lastly, timeline and geographic location in relation to the crime and the suspects. That is very, very important. You can literally break somebody just with figuring out a timeline. So we have the truth. That's the truth you live every day. If I was to talk to you, ask you what you did yesterday, it's very easy for you to tell me what you did yesterday. If it's a lie, you have to deviate from that truth. Now you have to make shit up. Now it's probably going to be pretty close to the truth because you're just not going to make up anything out of whole cloth. So there's going to be a parallel line a little bit there. You might dip back into the truth and dip back out into the lie, because you don't want, again, you don't want access and you want opportunity. You want to keep yourself away from those things that are going to catch you, that you're going to pay for, that your sin. So you're going to avoid that. However, as you dive into timelines, as you ask just really simple kind of breakdown questions, it's not a gotcha moment. It's like you just listen to the person and say, well, how did he get from point A to point B? And you break that down. What was there any traffic jams? Now, I have found that when I start feeling as if I'm not getting the whole truth, that we're paralleling truth, I will interject something into it. Like, let's say they were going from point A to point B. I said, oh, did you pass that wreck up on 75? And they say, yes. Yeah, I did. Well, there was no fucking wreck on 75. I just made that up. And in that instant, then I have an understanding of what we're doing now. So gears are going to start shifting. So on access and opportunity, they're very closely related. So I'm going to give you 3 general rules that I've found, and 2 of them might seem as if they are contradictory. So we'll start with a general. As a general rule, the more access the person has to a crime scene, it's the higher probability of guilt. Now, specifically, when evaluating a suspect's access, it is critical to establish how it happened, the modus operandi. How did this occur? So, did he bring the knife with him, or did he use the knife inside the house? How did he break into the house, or was he allowed into the house? These type of things. So when you're looking at a crime scene, you're trying to look at automatically access. Remember, the first 3 questions are: why here? Why now? Why this victim? Why? And you just look at the scene as if you are an archaeologist, and you're just kind of pulling layers, like how, what was the civilization like? What was, et cetera, et cetera. What was the circumstances of this moment of this person's life? So as a general rule, if you have more access, if you have clear access to whatever the crime scene is or to the victim, the higher the probability of guilt. Doesn't mean you're guilty. You're just going to assess this person as that. I'm going to jump to the 3rd rule, and this is where be highly suspicious of persons reporting or discovering their own crime. This happens quite a lot. I've had actual homicide where someone says, hey, they actually called the police to the apartment saying that they were locked out and they needed them to get in. That was his essentially alibi setup. So the cops said, I ain't busting in your damn door, because they have to write a report. So climb through the window. So they helped him climb through the window. He had to go through his own crime scene and open the door for the cops. And there the guy was. So right then, he's already started on, it's motivation and attitude. We'll get in that in a second. But he's already started on, how am I going to further myself from the opportunity and from the access? And that's how he thought he was going to do it. The cops didn't play along. They just tossed him through the open window. The second important rule is any unusual access should be elevated interest. So I know I just told you the more access is highly likely that they're probably guilty. Now I'm telling you the most unusual. Now, this plays out just on a small threadbare of some type of cases. So I'll give you the most simplistic, I guess, example. So let's say we have a stock boy at a local, grocery store, and Penny, she's the cashier, has been a cashier for years, and she suddenly says, "I have to leave. I have a family emergency." Well, Tom, he knows how to use the cash register. So it's late in shift, what have you, and he uses the cash register to check out a couple of customers, and that cash register comes up about $150, $250 short. So he's using that unusual access as a cover for, they won't be looking at me. She left here on an emergency, family emergency. So oftentimes someone who has unusual access, it's an opportunity that presents itself to them, and they take advantage of it. And they have the ability, or the opportunity has the built-in ability to have a cover that you're going to talk to 5 other people before you come to me. So those are 3 kind of general rules when you're thinking of access, as you're thinking up what your storyline is, what your crime is, how you're going to sort all your characters. We'll kind of take a little side road here. This is a subset of opportunity, and you have to deal with it because it's alibi. This is one of the most important parts of your investigation, because once you get to the end result going to be the criminal case, in front of the jury. Guess what your defense attorney is going to say? Like, my client didn't do it. And in fact, our entire system is based upon that. That man sitting next to me at the defense table is absolutely innocent. And it is upon me, the state, right, to convince other jurors that what I'm saying is true and that guy did it. So alibis are absolutely important. So these are the 7 kind of truths that I've found. Even if the alibi is verifiable and accurate, the person may still have some peripheral involvement. Remember our opportunity. Did he pay for it, arrange for it? They could have opportunity after the fact, getting rid of evidence, taking the suspect from point A to point B, et cetera, et cetera. So there, not only are you going to identify and categorize your witnesses, you're going to identify and categorize suspects, because some of them might just have not a leading role, but a backup role. Most alibis are hobbled together after the fact and break down their questioning and establishing timelines. I have found this to be extremely true. They just, like I said, the truth is easy. Telling a lie, and a sustained lie, is a little bit more difficult, especially if you have other people involved in whatever that you're doing. So you might have someone who is in a supporting role of the initial crime. They might have picked him up, taken the gun, hocked some things at the pawn shop, et cetera, et cetera. You're going to have to work that out in your alibi. It's going to be very difficult. However, a sustained and maintained lie is a incredibly hard thing to break. So any alibi minus a witness or corroborating facts, they say, I was at home, I was sleeping, I was watching TV, I took in a movie, I went for a walk in a park, I was hiking, whatever that is, I went for a drive. To try to break that is extremely hard. And the interesting thing I've found is that these alibis are naturally pretty much true, except for time and date. they'll be telling you about something that happened on Saturday, and you're investigating something that happened on Friday. And if they have an alibi witness, that witness will then just, all she or he has to do is just change the time and date. They can just tell the story. Yes, we went to Sunoco. I got a honey bun, a coffee, and we went to wherever they went. And we went in a walk in a park. And there was I don't think we saw anybody. And you just sit there and tell what happened on Saturday as if it happened on Friday. So those are extremely difficult because you kind of smell bullshit, but you don't know what to do with it. Alibis that follow the normal ebb and flow of someone's life are naturally true. We all have patterns. Every one of us have a pattern of what we do, how we interact, who we call, et cetera, et cetera. You just break down, like, what did you, if I open it up to you and I'm questioning you, okay, I'm investigating a crime that happened 12 hours ago. I'm going to start at what you did when you woke up and we're just going to talk. And therefore, it's going to give me a sense of what's your normal ebb and flow. It's just like what I said before, when you have a deceptive alibi, where they just change time and date, they're going to tell you this has nothing to do with the crime scene. This has nothing to do with what I did in the future. And it's just going to sound like we're talking. It's just going to sound natural. And then as we get closer to where you were at the time, it's going to get really clunky. So truthful alibis are normally chronological, but they adjust themselves under certain questions. And the telltale signs are what's you're thinking in your head and what your lifestyle pattern is. Like, did you stop off anywhere before you came to X? Oh, yeah, I did. You're right. I went to Kohl's. I had some extra time. My daughter was looking for, she had some pictures of her wedding, and I thought it'd be a nice gift. Her birthday was coming up. I thought maybe I'll go look for some picture frames. That's a normal ebb and flow of a person's life. That information has nothing to do with the alibi, but it's an inner thought. You're getting a bit more of what the person you're talking to thinks and feels and whatnot. And deceptive alibis end up being very inflexible. They're strictly chronological. They lack those kind of little lifestyle details. Once you get into the alibi of where were you when this thing happened? Why here? Why now? Why this person? Why you? Why am I looking at you as so? Any alibi from a known suspect arrested weeks or months later is highly suspect. It's often created to fit the known investigative details that you've already uncovered, and they discover witnesses, and these witnesses come to you, and their alibi or their story is just as chunky and concretely chronological as the suspect. It's when I say it's coached, it sounds coached, it feels coached. A lot of this stuff, like I said, it's not truly scientific. It's just how you interact in the world. So attitude. So we moved from opportunity to access, and we talked a little bit about alibis and how that relates to opportunity and access, because that's what the person wants to tell you, and that's what essentially the defense is going to be, that I wasn't there, you got the wrong person. But we have to understand that it takes a certain type of person. It takes a certain personality, even if it is a spontaneous act. The spontaneity of the act. It's one thing to stab somebody twice. It's another thing to stab them 30 times. There's something there. So that gets into biographical information as well. Like what was your past? What do I know about you? I want to know everything about you. But everyone has a threshold. To commit a crime, you're breaking societal rules and boundaries, and you got to be willing to tolerate that. You got to mitigate any anxiety that might give you. Um, think of yourself as at Kroger's, and you're going to steal something, and you've put it in your pocket or you put it in your purse, and how's it? Isn't your heart going to be like, do, 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 do? Aren't you going to be a little like, I need to get past this cashier? I need, oh my God, um, those detectors at the door. You know, there's a bit of a risk there. Um, so as we look at attitude, we also have to look at the kind of a biographical information. So what crimes would if I'm a high level achiever, if I have family, if I have status in the community, am I going to take that risk? What risks am I going to take? This says something about you. The type of crime committed, how it's committed, says something about the person because it's a willful act. It has to say something about you because it's a willful act. Motivation is very related to attitude because this is what's going to motivate you. I believe that these three are pretty cover up pretty much all the bases, I should say. Real needs, lifestyle needs, and psychological needs. Now, is there a so let me think this way. So once again, let's not look at this as we're going to look at these categories, but they can bleed into each other. So let's say I want to present this as a speedometer on your car. Okay, what's fast? That's relative to where you're driving, the type of road. Is 30 miles an hour fast in the suburb? Is 70 miles an hour fast, on the highway? All right. So these are categories. What's fast, what isn't fast, but they kind of bleed into each other. So a real need and a lifestyle need. So if your character has an addiction, that's a real need. He's going to steal for a real need. But it's also a lifestyle need because he wants to maintain that lifestyle. But it's a real need because he has to have money to get heroin. And it's an expensive habit. You're talking, if you're well into a heroin habit, you're spending about $100 a day.
Wow.
So that's a real need and a lifestyle need. So we're going to look at shoplifting, stealing, burglary, and this and that. Now, does our attitude change as we get deeper into addiction? Yes. What you wouldn't have done, say 6 months ago, now you're going to break into somebody's house. That was off limits a minute ago. But now your real need, your lifestyle need has to be kept up. So that's what you're going to do. Psychological needs are what I've found in a lot of homicides and as well as rapes and sexual abuse of children. Those are psychological. That's not, as I said before, the crime says something about you because it's your willful act. So I have interviewed many a person who have committed rape, and when you're in that situation, you have to live in their, like, understand their life or understand how they see life, and you start you usually the best way to do it is I found is you minimize the victim. You don't personalize the victim. You don't use the victim's name. You use terminology that degrades the victim. You use rough words that, not sexual contact, not sexual, intercourse, you're going to use something else, some kind of guttural word or something. I guess think of it as a locker room talk, maybe. So there's psychological needs. Lifestyle needs also are, let's say, embezzlement, killing your wife for insurance, or you don't want her life anymore because you want to now marry your mistress. That would be termed as, I would say, a lifestyle need. You want to shed whatever it is that you want to shed and start anew, but you're not going to do it on the straight and narrow path with hard work and as life comes at you. No, you're going to willfully bend this thing into your will. And then people do things that are, horrific. And you're like, what the hell did you give all that up for? That type of thing. So biographical information. So we have on here age, gender, race, marital status, role models, intelligence, and substance abuse. These are just some of them. So every interview that I've ever done, it starts with me with a pencil in my hand, a piece of paper in front of me, and these folks want to go right to the starting line. They want to go right. If they want to have an alibi, that's the first thing they want. They want to tell me I didn't do this, it wasn't me, or why are you looking at me, or so on and so forth. And I go, hold on a second, I don't even know anything about you. And you just go through this tedious process of, what's your name? How do you spell it? Where do you live? Where'd you grow up at? Do you have anybody in your family? How many kids you got? Are you have 5 kids? 3 of them you live with? Do you visit the other 2? Or is the relationship unrepairable? You get a sense of a person. Marital status is a commitment. What are you committed to? What's in your life? Right? So I'm going to bring it back again, and we're going to look at how I just laid all those out: opportunity, alibi, attitude, motivation. What do you have to lose, and what are you willing to risk? It just keeps going through the same cycle. Why this victim? Why now? Why here? Why here is the opportunity. Why now is an opportunity. Why this victim says something about, you say something in your biographical information. It's you. So when you are trying to develop a character in this, if you continue, I think you'd be fine if you continually ask yourself, or not ask yourself, get into the psyche of a human being, I guess. And what is a willful act? And what does that say? Why do we make these choices that we do? What makes you go left and me go right? And then how does life just coming at you change you, affect you, or that substance abuse is that's why I got that in. That alters your thinking. You become a different person. Every addict is the same. They're all the same. They all think the same. They all do the same. They all lie the same, because they're addicted to the drug. That's all they think about. Anything they do within the day is for that purpose, to get $100, to get high. Everything. So their biographical information tells you a great deal a lot. Your role model. Did you have a father in the house? Who are your role models? What family situations you grow up in? That makes a difference. If you have, and even I deal with a great deal. Most of the people these things I've dealt with it's lower in the lower socioeconomic status, but I've dealt with individuals as well that have investigated. The city treasurer of Covington, he got investigated and stole $3 million from city coffers for over 7 years because he had opportunity and access, because he was the head financial director. So he was able to make up these accounts and control the flow of the money. And his real world need or lifestyle needs, he wanted his daughters to go to the best school that they could go to. So that's where all the money went. Well, a lot of them went to vacations and other things, but a good deal went to there. But in the interview and in the interrogation, it was like I hit upon the lifestyle need, essentially, that he wanted to give his daughters a better life, what he had, where his role models were. You have to tap into that because it was kind of understand what motivates a person, where they come. Lastly is evidence. I can't tell you how important evidence is. It's a marker of, yep, I'm on the right goalpost. I'm still playing the game. I'm within the lines of the football field. I have reached the goal. It centers your investigation. Like I said, there's no round pegs that are going to be pounded into square holes. So you have basically two types: circumstantial and physical. Circumstantial is circumstantial normally falls under, let's say, did he have enough? If his alibi says X and Y, did he have enough time to go from X to Y? And you would like get in your car 1,000 different ways and try to get from X to Y in time. Is that possible in the time frame that he said he was doing this? That type of. A lot of circumstantial evidence is also witness testimony, and witness testimonies always have glitches to them because, like I said, we only pay attention to certain slices of life and this and that. So, as a writer, there's a great, you can have fun. I would say you can have a lot of fun with that, as in how the characters are on your story, the suspect, the victim, and the witnesses, and how that all these slices of a reality, a timeline. That's why I said timelines are so important, because you start establishing things, and then you can start pegging people into your timeline. And if you've seen that in a detective show, how they have a chalkboard or something, or some kind of a wall space, and they got a line and they put people's names in and times. Yes, we do that. Absolutely, it's the only way to keep this straight in their head. So that, like I said, you can continue to categorize your witnesses and categorize your suspect, and then plug in circumstantial and physical evidence. Now, as it comes to, because I know DNA, hair fibers, and this and that, these are all pretty sexy things. In real life, and in my career, they are extremely important, but they're not going to give you the answer. I'm going to have a suspect in custody, or I'm going to have somebody in front of me before I have any of that, any of it. It takes nearly 6 months to get a DNA sample back from the lab, if not longer. It'll take nearly a month for, let's say, if I found a gun. So they have the ATF came with this new program, and when I was it's about 5 years old now, I'd say. So if you have a shell case, the striker pin of the firearm gets worn down. It just is metal against metal. So it's like a fingerprint for the shell casing. So you can collect shell casings from a scene, and they can, within really, really good odds, tell you if it came from that gun. Other things is that the rifle, it will fire a test bullet, because every pistol, every rifle, except for shotguns are smooth bore. Everything is rifle. In other words, they take a piece of steel, they take a bit, and they drill it out. So every turn is its own turn. It's its own fingerprint. It's its own groove. So that when you fire the test bullet through the gun and you have a viable bullet pulled out of somebody, they can line up the serrations and say, that's the gun that did it. Now, from there, who has opportunity to access? You see what I'm saying? Then from there, you get who has opportunity, who has access to that. Then from there, who had access to the victim, so on and so forth. You can line that up. But honestly, it'll take a month or two before I even get that answer. So physical evidence oftentimes becomes just a kind of a marker. Like, are we on the right path? Why this person? I'm being scientific about this? Am I, cutting out my biases? Is what the facts are telling me? Is that what I'm getting? Because it's just difficult. Like I said, you're working against someone who's working against you. All the information that I'm asking you, you're getting information. Anything I ask you about a crime scene or anything I ask you about, you're getting information just as much as you're giving information. It is a test of wills. It is a game. It is a hunt. And there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. I can't think of anything else that is more satisfying and exhilarating than that. I'm going to cut out just this person sitting there in a room alone. That's not much going on right there.
He's a little nervous.
You think he's chewing on that gum, ain't he? Someone gave him some water.
Do you watch them before you come in to see things like that? Are they nervous? What are they doing?
Yeah, sometimes you can. I'll tell you this is a real life homicide suspect. He is involved in a double shooting. And his name just keeps coming up. We are very early into this. I'll tell you, I was working an overtime detail. I'm a sergeant at this time. I work an overtime detail in patrol, meaning that I'm off duty, but I'm working in a uniform role. Like I was up on the interstate as they were doing construction. So they allow us to do that. You kind of take your police powers, but another entity pays you. And the trade-off is that if any enforcement needs to happen, then, well, you're a police officer and now you just roll into that role. So it's kind of a win-win situation for, I guess, society. And that's not that you have all these extra policemen out there, but the city doesn't have to flip their bill. So you might be hired to stand outside of a bar, or you might be hired to walk in the neighborhood for a neighborhood association, things like that. It's an extra way to make, that I was able to make money and raise my, kids and snap. So anyhow, I don't know why I went into all that. But anyhow, I am up on the interstate. I hear this call come out, and I hear there's a shooting, and I hear that there's several people down, and so on and so forth. So my job then is now to call out the on-call detective. So I call him out of bed. I say, hey, this is what you got on. It sounds like you got a homicide and a double shooting. So he comes out and we talk to another. And I said, well, I've been up all day long. Now it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. I said, if you can run with this take it as far as you can. And then he was going off the training on Monday and going to be out of town. So I knew the case was going to have to come back to me. So yeah. So what happened here is that this guy is starting to get developed as a suspect because people would keep calling in with his name, his street name, and his name. I don't know nothing about him. I don't understand what the hell happened. I don't even understand why it happened, because my victims, as I said, was why here, why now, why them? And I just could not come up with, why would anybody want to do that to her? I didn't even get it. So he shows up on what was this, a Tuesday? Now, in the backdrop of this, we've already had a homicide in the same block 2 days beforehand. Is this a retaliation? I have no idea. And right here, it's Tuesday. On Thursday, we're going to have another shooting. And is this all linked together? I have no idea. But he comes in here because he knows his name is out there and he wants to be the first to come to me to tell me he didn't do it. So we're going to watch how biographical information, how we're going to slow this down. That's all he wants to talk about. He wants to come in here for 20 minutes, tell me he didn't do it, and walk out the damn door. All right, here we go. See if this works.
Yes, 5.
Yeah.
All right. You have
by the same woman?
I got 3 by 1, and one about 2. About 2. I got 3 baby mama.
The 3 children that you have, what's the name of the mom?
Caitlin Covington, Kailin Covington.
And the other 2?
Jacquees Collins, Jacquees Collins. Excuse me.
All right, good.
And the other one's named Latasha Golson. And that's Ghoston.
All right. Current girlfriend here is Caitlin?
Yes.
Good contact number for you?
513-409-1269.
Employed right now?
No, so I just been actually waiting for school to start back up, and I was working on with my cousin on doing floors, but I got a bullet in my leg, so I really can't stand up for a long period of time. So I just been going to school lately.
From earlier shooting?
No, I got shot last year.
Yeah, and down on 12th Street lines?
Yes, sir. That was me. I had the bullet still in my leg. I can barely work. It be puffing up sometime, but I've been going to school.
Okay. All right, Jermaine, I have no idea what's going to come out your mouth here, right?
Yes, sir.
So I'll let you know, you get the right to remain silent, even though you came in here, right? I don't know, are you going to leave out of here without handcuffs? I don't know, or where this is going. I'm open, right? But I want to let you know you got the right to remain silent, okay? You got a right to a lawyer. The right to...
So if I was good, I would have showed up with a lawyer. But I'm here.
Okay.
My name keep being brought up. They keep saying they're gonna do stuff to my family. My girl brother in Kent County, he's getting called somehow. He calling home saying that they're gonna do something to us, and I ain't done nothing wrong, sir. And I'm here to clear my name up. Y'all ain't came looking for me. Y'all put my name on the news, but I'm here to clear my name up, sir.
All right. Well, you got to remain silent. And you say Kane will be used against you in a court of law. You got a right to have an attorney. You have a right to have an attorney present while you're talking to me. You have a right to have an attorney anytime you want to make a statement. You have if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to represent you if you so wish. And you can stop questioning at any point in time, asking to consult with an attorney or just shutting up. Understand all that?
Yes, sir.
All right. You good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll just open the floor up to you. Go ahead. Start off with, let's go back to, let's say when you woke up on Friday. We'll start there.
So there's where I tell him we're going to open this up, and he's going to tell me if you have a pencil or paper in front of you, I would challenge you. He's going to go through an alibi here. I would challenge you to try to catch everything that he's saying. To try to get all the details of, I'm going to let him just talk. I'm not going to tell you all the details. Because he's coming in and telling you, I didn't do this. I was somewhere else. And this is how my day started. Now it's going to give you, once again, we're talking about, think about access, opportunity, motivation, attitude, biographical information. I've just got some of it. He's going to give me more of it as to what his day looks like and what it sounds like, how easy truth is until we get to something closer to Well, the actual truth.
I woke up that Friday, sir. Dropped my baby mom off at work to out there in Florence and Frischers. Came back.
I'm sorry, is this Kayla?
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right.
Came back home, got the kids up, ready to go to daycare. And around that time, after that, from like I dropped her off, I get back down to E-Way by like 9:30, 9:45. I went to Cincinnati, just riding around, just smoking black and mild and just seeing people. And then about 12 o'clock, I got robbed by some guy. And he took my phones, $300.
12, like noon?
It was probably about 1-ish or something like that. 1-ish, 2, I don't know the exact time. So I got robbed from phones and money. And then after that, I went and got my car out the shop because my car was at credit. I got my car at the shop. After that, I went and met up with my girl. She just got off of work and she was figuring out what happened to your phone. And my girl got a phone on my iPhone truck. I said, somebody robbed me for it. I don't know where it's at. She said, you want me to call the police? I said, just leave it on for right now. And that was it. And from there, we was at our granny house right here on Patton and Garrett was there for a nice amount of time. I was there, my girl, her granny, Cecily, everybody that lived in that house right there on Garrett and Patton. Then later on that night, about 11:45, my girl dropped me off in Cincinnati to my cousin on Glenwood. And we ended up going to this nightclub called Nephew, and we were just sitting right there smoking and stuff. And then that's when somebody called me and said that stuff happened over here. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. They asked me where I was. I'm like, I'm way in Cincinnati at this Nephew's club right here with my cousin is chilling. And that was it. And then I didn't go. I stayed with my cousin that night until the next morning. Then I met her with my baby mama and got my baby in. The same thing, the daily routine, because she go to work, I get the kids, take them to daycare, sir. Like, I don't know.
It's a routine.
It's a daily routine. I pick her up. In the morning, we get up, get the kids up, get them to school, daycare, take her to work. And I come out, I might go look for a job. I might been starting to get in school. I've been trying to get my leg together for real because I need a job. I don't want to work and my leg's so messed up. I can barely stand up in a long period of time. Like sometime when it rains, the bullet get to moving and stuff like so. I ain't been able to really work and provide but for my kids, but I have though.
Okay. Who's your cousin?
My cousin named Tank.
What's the real name?
His name he's my mom. He's my mom nephew. He's 41. His name is Adrian and Andre St. Clair.
Well, tell me about Andre. Everything you know about him. Male, black.
He's male, black.
He's 41.
He's 41.
Bald headed.
No bald head, sir.
Full head of hair.
Yeah, he got like nice little low cut hair and stuff.
Beard.
Yes, that's little facial hair. Yes, sir.
Does he work?
I mean, as my knowledge, sir, we really don't really talk that much. We really just started coming together because my family is so dispersed. We just, you see, I'm 25, he's 41. We just trying to, you feel good. We talking about family. I ain't seen him in years. Like so.
Fair enough, but I get what you're saying. I just want to just give me as much as you know about him.
I'm giving you as much I know. So.
Okay. What neighborhood do you live in?
In Avondale.
Avondale?
Yes, sir.
You got a number for him?
513-510-2108.
Is he married? Got a girl?
I think he's probably a bachelor, sir. You know, I want to ask, where's my name keep getting brought up in this, sir?
Oh, good question.
I'm saying that's the streets. That's the only reason I'm down here, sir, because like the room on the streets is that y'all looking for me, and I supposedly done that, sir. My mom and them like, if you ain't done that, you can go down there and clear your name up. But here I am. My dad out there, he said, I'm gonna take you down here. You ain't done nothing wrong. Clear my name. Well, I'm here. I just want to know like what's going on. Why I'm here.
Yeah, you're here because you wanted to show up here. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Why does my name keep being brought up?
I have no idea. I don't have really an answer for you, right?
Yes,
So the best I can tell you is what I sort of the conversation I had with your girlfriend was there's a witch hunt going on, and your name just got tossed into this. So the sharks are like all circling. Why you? You know, I ain't there yet to understand why. That's what I was working on, is the why.
Yes, sir.
But here we are, and we can get all the why and answers here.
Yes, sir.
All right.
So you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So if you've been keeping score, how this went along, I'll give you kind of some background. So I get pulled off the street. I'm in working this homicide, and he just shows up to headquarters and goes and pushes the call box and says, "Hey, I want to talk to a detective about this homicide." So that I get pulled in, and I have no idea what he's going to say. I am still so early into this. I don't even understand. I'm still grasping at straws to try to make the contours of why this victim and why now and how this all happened. So he tells us that biographical information tells us about a bit of his life there. He has 5 kids. He's living with 3 of them. He's currently with a girlfriend. He takes her to work. Well, I know that she takes her to work to Frisch's, and that's in Florence, and that's about 20 miles away from where he lives. So she has to be at work at 7 in the morning. So they're up early, and then he drops the kids off, and then he says he drives around a bit. Well, in whose car?
Right, because then he says his car's in the shop, right?
His car's in the shop.
Yeah.
And then he said he got robbed.
Yeah, isn't
And
that
then he hits the car out
hello?
of the shop.
Exactly.
Where the
Hello.
money come from?
Right. Already, right? So this is what an alibi that is it's hemmed in, because he's telling a bit of the truth, as I said, but he just veers off at different places. He tells me he got robbed, and he did get robbed, and this is the reason for the whole homicide.
Oh.
He didn't have $300. He had $300 of dope that he bought that was owed to somebody else. They fronted him $300 worth of heroin, and the dude came over and robbed him.
Oh, sorry.
Now, the guy who robbed him is a character that I have never met. I'm sure I'll never meet again. His name's Little Chris. I've known him since he was a young kid, but then he just kind of dropped off the earth and, I don't know, moved to Cincinnati, wherever. And all of a sudden he came back to Covington. So he is dating a girl by the name of Missouri Collins. No relation to the Collins that he's talking about. He's Missouri. Little Chris sometimes uses Missouri's car, and he is in the most dangerous drug business in the world. He robs drug dealers. Most dangerous thing you can do. And the crazy thing is I try to investigate, because is it possible that there was some kind of gunplay before the shots? You know, was he there with a gun? Is, you know, that type of thing. You want self-defense, or that you want to eliminate that. As far as I could tell, and I think I'm pretty sure that this dude, Little Chris, never carries a gun. He will rob you straight up just by beating the shit out of you.
Wow. Bad.
He is. He just nihilistic. I mean, just living from day to day, moment to moment.
Wow.
So he ends up robbing. This is not the first time. This is the second time that Little Chris has come up on him. Little Chris has set up a drug deal, and then Little Chris comes up and starts beating him and takes all his money and his drugs, and then goes and sells it. So he's now in the hole for about $600 to $1,000 by this last robbery. But it ain't his drugs. It's the hired drug dealer, the guy that don't get his hands dirty, right? Remember, we talked about those who aren't at the crime scene but have something to do with it. He's now in prison too, because they set up this hit. But Knucklehead here shot at Missouri's car as she came up on the block, killed her, and shot her dad that was in a back seat, and another girl was in the back seat, because he just started spraying the car with bullets. He didn't kill the person he wanted to kill. It just became a bigger problem for him. So he is getting pressure from all angles. That's why he's in that room. He's getting threats, no doubt. He wants to get his name out of this. So he has a motivation and he has his own attitude. You can see how those things kind of keep flowing into each other.
Mm-hmm.
If you just open your eyes for it. So let's go back to his ally. This is his alibi. I am with my cousin. What's his name? Tank. Oh, well, let me go into the phone book and find Tank. What the hell? What is that? If you got it, he said a name before he said the name. He said Andre, and then he said something Sinclair, either way it was. The first name he said, and then he changed it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I heard it, I said, I bet he's cool. Yeah, I bet he just put two different people's names together, which actually he did.
I thought it was interesting too. He's like, well, I don't know him that well. We haven't seen each other in years. And you're like, what's his phone number? And he just rattles it off.
Right off.
That went nowhere. That was a beep, beep, beep. That was nothing. So later on this interview, so he wants to get up and leave. And my job is to keep, I know it, he's not going to, this is going to have to wait for another interview or something, or I'm going to have to do something. It ain't coming now because he wants to get out because he wants to throw it back on me. Well, why you accuse me? And I'm like, buddy,
Yeah.
you can't be.
Yeah.
You're sitting here. I don't know. You tell me. You got the floor. So when I start asking these questions, timeline questions, we'll start breaking this down, and I'm going to break down the robbery. I'm going to break down where he was. We'll go on for another 2 hours. My only goal is to keep him in that chair and talking. All I want you to do, I want to keep you. If I get too close to the live wire, I'm going to back off and we'll talk about something else, and then come back to the live wire. I'm going to keep coming back. So he says he goes and picks up his car. All right. So now the robber. So he goes up to this intersection to do this drug. And he's standing there next to a couple of dudes that are on the corner. And he gets knocked the hell out. Like he said, some dude came up and just started punching me. And then I got knocked out. And I came to. I said, you came to? I said, who's standing there? He says, well, the dudes that were standing on the corner. And then I said, well, what did you do about that? He says, well, nothing. I said, well, how do you know they didn't hit you in the head? And they said, no, the dude just came around the corner and hit me and took off running with my cell phone and all that stuff. I said, what? I said, do you think they were setting you up? Then he gets in the car. He talks to them. And he says, I need to get to my car. How the hell he got there, I have no idea to this day. How he got to that point, I have no idea. Somebody dropped him off. Somebody was there. Someone else was there that I have never met. He goes down and gets his car out of the shop. So now he has a car. Where was the first car he had? I mean, it just gets weirder and weirder. It's just just a straight line truth. Like I said, he's just like, well, how did you get point A to point B? It's just those type of questions. It breaks it down. He starts talking about he starts giving me alibi witnesses. His first alibi that is horrible. I mean, he should really thought this one out better. But his other alibi witnesses on the side is Cecily's house, Cecily Green, and Ma. And he's up there with them, hanging out with them. Okay, well, now all I need to do is try to figure out where the hell he's talking about, because he gives me an intersection. Now I got to find the house. So once I do, now I have more people to talk to. Mm-hmm. And they're going to back up this alibi, and they're going to talk about this robbery and how pissed he was. And he's going to leave that house because he'd been drinking rum because he's pissed. He's going to leave the house, according to these witnesses that he inadvertently gave me. He's going to leave the house, and he says that Caitlin drives him over to Cincinnati. Doesn't happen. Everyone says he got into that car in which he got out of the garage and left, and Caitlin went home. And at about midnight is when the shooting happens.
Oh.
This investigation here took 3.5 years.
Wow.
Because I couldn't did you hear how shitty that lie is? But
yes.
You see what I'm saying? He wasn't there. He's telling me the truth. It's 95% truth,
Yeah.
except for that really, really important part that I want. And it was hard as hell to bring. He walked around free. We tried everything. We tried to get him. We had him targeted over Cincinnati for drug dealing. He went into jail again for like running from cops or stuff like that. We tried getting somebody inside his cell. Everything we were trying. So then we ended up trying. So the FBI, the one great thing the FBI has done is they've opened up these task forces, because you'll have local police officers, like there's Covington officers who are in the Vice unit who are on the FBI task force, because they have all the information. They feed all the information. FBI it's a different entity. They're not at the street level. All the information comes up in the street to deal with these violent crimes and this and that. So I went to that liaison officer. I said, this is what I need. I need you to focus all your energy on this one drug dealer. And that was the dude he was working for. And he had a horrible record. And it took a long time, but they actually found him in control of heroin. And he was going to do, by federal standards, he was going to do 20 years just off that, because his record was so horrible, so violent and horrible. So he turned on him and gave testimony. And that's how we ended up making an arrest and solving the case. The other guys took a lesser plea deal. He was offered 20 years. He said, no, I'm going to take the box. He got 35.
Wow.
Ooh. I have a question. You said the liaison officer, is it between the FBI and what other agency?
Yeah, so the liaison officer is a Covington police officer. They get sworn in on a essentially temporary deputized basis. They're an FBI agent. They can enforce federal law. They have the same arrest powers as an FBI agent does, but it's just for that time that they are in that unit, in that task force.
Okay.
So once they leave the unit, then all their powers are done. You're not part of the FBI.
Okay.
The benefit is that they have all the intel from patrol officers. They know the city. FBI agents, they get transferred around, and you can go from San Antonio to here to Louisville and so on and so forth. You have people that live here. I've lived in Newport all my life, so I have a lot more interest in information, just practical stuff. And that is what really drives the federal task forces, is that local access. It's one of the, it's almost constitutionally wonderful. Like, it's local control with, state and federal. It's it's the best linkage of our government system.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah.
I'm going to slip in and say, do you mind stopping sharing your screen, and let's give everybody a chance to offer you questions.
Sure.
We're at 5 to 1. If you can stay on longer, I'm sure Brian would be willing to do that. Is that okay with you, Brian?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so let's transition to Q&A. Who has a question?
I've got one. I've got more than one, but I'll let other people have a chance. So when he was talking to you in real time, were you spotting the lies or the implausibility, or did it take you after the interview to sit down and look at your notes and say, that doesn't make sense? Like we just did impromptu, right?
Yeah. So exactly. So what I had you do impromptu is what I'm doing. I'm scribbling something here, a question. I have this, you develop this kind of shorthand. I understand. The running joke is that if you look at Kane's case file, it would make no sense to you, because it's just all shit scribbled that I understand. It's all here. So, yeah. So what I was doing is essentially posited to you. Listen and just start writing things down. That what? Huh? Question mark. However you're coming back to that. So then we go back and slow that down. I said, okay, I hear what you're saying. And I want to understand you. I appreciate you came in here and you're giving me information as to why you're not the person I should be looking at, which is great because I won't waste time on it. You give them that, reward them, to keep them in that chair. I want to keep them in that chair because I'm going to start taking this thing apart. So then that where you're asking is, I go back through. I said, could you hold on? Can you talk about that? So we talk about the robbery. We go back to the robbery. I start saying, why in the world would you get in a car with guys that on it? Maybe they set you up. And he's like, yeah, maybe they did. And then, so finally, it all breaks. I can't make the arrest. But here's where it gets really troublesome for me. So I'm never going to be able to find Andre Sinclair because Andre Sinclair doesn't exist. I'm never going to be able to call him on the phone because he gave me a phone number that doesn't exist. But how did he know? He said he was at the club. He got two phones stolen. He says someone called him. I said, who's the first person that called you? He said, well, a hell of a lot of people. I said, well, you might have had a hell of a lot of people, but it's had to start with one. Who was the first person to contact you? He says he can't remember. All right, who's the second? Who's the third? And then I asked him, how did they know your number? You got a new phone. You just got a new phone. How do they know your number? He walked out of the interview on that one.
Yeah.
Good. Cool. But you gotta really be on your toes.
Oh yeah, it's exhilarating. It is. It's
Yeah, I could understand the Ernest Hemingway quote. Well, one other question. You're probably even when you were early as a detective, you're not the first one on the scene. So you have like this, I'll say the street cops. I don't know the lingo, but they're there and they secure the scene, I guess. Yeah. And so do you ever have issues with that?
Yes.
I'm curious if you have anything to say or
all the time. So I was Mickey we were talking about this she was kind of relaying some things that she had kind of developed in her book and as it pertains to crime scenes. And I'll tell you what I told her, chaos. It is chaos. You oftentimes have to go back and interview each of the cops, like, what did you touch? Where is this at? The first, if you think about it, you're a patrolman, you get this call, someone shot, ambulance is coming. There's a firemen move in groups. Cops move in twos. They will send two cops to handle some problem. If it gets really bad, they'll just keep throwing cops at it. Whereas firemen, they all come in a group. You can't do anything without being in a group. So you're going to have, on a shooting call, you're going to have a pumper there, you're going to have an ambulance there, you're going to have about 5 to 6 firemen tromping through your scene to either extract this victim or, pronounce them, whatever it is. So then after that all happens, then everyone starts slowing down. Supervisor gets there, he gets on the phone, says, we got something that's out of our league, we get to call it. So you would call the detective bureau captain or lieutenant, tell him what he has, and then I would be on call as a major case detective, and I'd be sent out. So that's what I did on this night. I already heard it, so I just already started calling the Detective West out. So he got there fairly quickly, and was able to mitigate a lot of what would happen. So sometimes your crime scene might be, well, it's in this room, and then no, it's now at this dumpster. Oh, it's in this field. Like as you learn more, then it might start expanding. So you might have be in the bedroom, but then also now you take the whole apartment, or you get out the street. If it's out the street, then the whole street is shut down.
Other questions? I'll do another one then, and maybe
Oh.
because I love crime, so I guess I'm in a good writing genre. I was so fascinated by the Murdaugh murder in South Carolina. I watched the trial and all sorts of things about that. What an incredible pathological liar that guy is. But I watched a lot of the footage. This goes back to who secures the scene. And he's on videotape just blurting out all sorts of stuff and his possible alibi and everything to the guy who's just, I'm just here to secure the scene, you know. And I guess eventually the detectives wind up. But I thought that was fascinating. And that's a crime scene that, like, it was like the bodies were in a certain space, but I mean a big open field and outbuildings and all sorts of things, and it just fascinating.
So
now it's going to be reopened.
Yeah.
He wants to appeal that. Yeah, I kept track with that one because I thought that was just the character of that, just the pathological character that, and then the background of that, and the children even, you know, were even. I mean, it was generational almost. I mean, like what was it like living? You know, you start kind of thinking those things. You can't help but yes, as far as the crime scene, so you're in a small county, was it South Carolina, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're in a county environment. It's a deputy sheriff. When you call the police, you call 911, and you don't ever talk to a policeman. You talk to a dispatcher, and they send you a cop. And that cop might have 2 years experience or might have 20 years experience. You have no idea. You don't get to choose. You get to choose your plumber more than you get to choose a cop.
Right.
You're going to do more research on who's going to build your deck than who's going to solve your daughter's homicide. And that's what you have to deal with. So that's, as a detective, you know, I was well trained. They really supported me. I went to some great schools, and in being in SWAT and stuff, I, you know, learned all sorts of tactical stuff and how to think clearly through what stress and this and that. So that helped me a lot. But I'm still having to deal with the plate that's been dealt me. So I might have somebody who showed up to the crime scene, like you said, and the dude's like, "Hey, I'm just here to steal a crime scene," and they're not sealing it at any. The guy's walking around.
Right, exactly.
On a fucking chair.
And he had a gun, and like, what are you doing with that shotgun? Oh, I heard shots.
The only thing that cop's thinking about is, I don't want nothing to do with this. I don't want to make no decisions. I just want to. They told me to stand here. I'm going to stand here. So yeah, when you're thinking up your crime scene, I know you probably get tempted to be romantic, but don't. It's much more interesting if it's messy, I can assure you.
That's good. That's good to know. Any other questions?
I have a question. I'm curious, have you do you have any experience of working with or having private detectives interfere in the investigation or working with them? Kind of any thoughts about that?
Only a few times. It normally has to do with like theft and things of that nature. A great deal of time, let's say if you're talking about a private investigator, that would be like working with say CVS, Walgreens, something like that, had some kind of Kroger security and so that. Oftentimes they can be helpful to you if you set the parameter, like, this is my case. I know you have, I'll give them information because they got people to answer to, and there's an email change. Okay, I'll give you, but as long as we understand each other that I'm making decisions here. This is my case, and not in a way that is off-putting, but just in a way that you establish yourself. You know, you just step through the door, and you can then use them for all sorts of information, because they can do things, say things that I'm a state agent. The first 10 bill, the Bill of Rights is directed right to me. So I have to tell people that, you know, when they're in interrogation, they ain't free to leave, and they can shut up and have a lawyer and all that stuff. That doesn't apply to them. So you can kind of use that, and you can use their information systems, because every time you go to Kroger's and use your Kroger card, Kroger knows all about you. And I get that information. So I want them to be helpful to me. The only other time I've had an investigator, and he was a bit of a pain in the ass, and he was a private investigator, is when some lady's safe got stolen. There was a lot of money in it, and she wasn't happy with how fast or how slow or my progress in this, so she hired and he was just all in it, and he kept on calling me, telling me what I needed to do and this and that. And I thought, she did. And the case went nowhere, because it just became an absolute nightmare. Because he was interviewing people, and I'm trying to interview people, and he's looking I'm looking at people. It just became a nightmare. That was the only time like a private investigator really got in the way. For most of the time, you're dealing with like some kind of corporate security or something along those lines, and they're pretty helpful. They're kind of like cop wannabes, so they're happy to help. They're like, you know, just double them a little junior detective, and they're send them on their way. They're good for you.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, do you think it would be a conflict if the private investigator was an ex-cop, or do you think that would be an advantage?
I think it'd be an advantage, because then he can utilize, once again, certain information systems that would be off limits to anyone else. You know, he has friends or witness and that, and you know, that does happen. There is a good market for officers when they retire. They go to these, you know, financial crimes and stuff like that, and the corporations like it, because they'll put on trainings. And like I said, I was trained in a lot of these trainings and stuff where they kind of talk about interrogation or about, you know, retail crime or organized retail crime, and this and that is sponsored by these companies, and that's in their interest, you know. So yeah, it can be a good bond. I've worked with several retired Cincinnati police officers for Kroger's and whatnot, that helped me out with various investigations. I just say, hey, I need this. I got a bank robbery, and it has nothing to do with Kroger's, but they'll help me out and get footage, or it's an inside. It helps a lot with the surveillance footage and getting information like from the store. You know, it is really a road. It's an inroad. It's something positive. There's no rubbing. There's no friction.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I still have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, now I don't know too much about this, but there's a local FBI and a federal FBI, correct? And that's like in every state. Okay, so if something like happens in the local FBI is handling it, but like if it gets bigger to where it goes into the federal laws or whatever, and that's when you get the bigger boys. Is that correct?
So yes, I guess I would correct you in this manner.
Okay.
They have FBI agent at a local satellite office, regional office, can tap into all the powers of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. If they need something crime wise, some analyzed, some information, they can get it.
Okay.
It'll go straight. So if you have something where, so it's broken down like this, it's regionally. Yes, you're right. So you will have, like, say, the Cincinnati office. That's the regional office, but you'll have little satellite offices, say one in Chillicothe, or say one in, name another city that's around Cincinnati, a little smaller city, or some Hamilton or something. And they might have 2 or 3 agents in that satellite office who kind of work with the police and do investigations and whatnot. But then at the regional office, there's a officer in charge, or a federal, essentially like a captain or a lieutenant, or whatever you would make the connection. They're in charge of that office. So anything that we need goes up to him, and then he calls Washington and says, this is what we need. And they say, okay, send it, do it, send you money, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how the train, or the trickle effects comes down. So let's say I want, so to use this case I gave you is to help you understand. So I used our officers who were on the task force, and I said, I need this. You need to start looking at this dude, and whatever, how much money you need to throw at him, we need to get him arrested. And we have to fucking figure this out. He goes, tells his regional office. That guy says, this is what we have. I go have a meeting with that guy, the supervisor of the regional office, which was out of Louisville. And I say, this is why we need it. He's a violent career criminal. We have a double homicide. I have 2 other homicides that I don't know whether or not they're all, and this is like, they love this, because that's the whole point of the task force, is to go after street violent crime. This is a win. They love it. So yes. So then that information goes to Washington, and Washington starts showering us with money to start making deals, or renting all the things, pole cameras, on and on and on it went. Just so we could break this up, just because of one life.
There's never like the big guys coming in town. There's no need for that.
Yeah, there's no, they
So
don't.
basically, Washington just sends the money for whatever need you all have. Okay.
Yeah. Only in like say you have some high level event, like a school shooting or something, or something like that. Maybe they'll start sending people down, but terrorists, like maybe they'll start sending. I've yet to see them.
Okay.
It's usually the guys I know around office.
So you were talking about how long it takes to get a DNA analysis, and I don't know, a part of that is, or one function of the, let me put it another way, if it's a high profile case, might you get it sooner? That's one question. I'm not sure how high profile it would have to be.
So that would be can we, so high profile case of some sort, can we tap into the FBI? And because they help. It is what they're doing. It's just not PR. They are helping you out.
Yeah.
They would want to be, that would you'd make a good case for that. And you would take your evidence that you have, instead of sending it to the state lab, they're always backed up, and they're always losing their techs to other states because Kentucky just doesn't pay them very well. So it gets backlogged. So I'm waiting 6 months for a DNA sample, and I only get 6 tries. I can only send down 6 things.
Wow.
There's also there's a whole booklet they change them every year of what the rules, what you can send down, so on and so forth.
You would think
I would work on trying to get it to, hey, can the FBI send it up to Washington or their lab, and can they do it and give me a quicker time?
It would be a good way to help solve and therefore reduce crime if they poured some money into those kinds of resources.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, but that's not happening.
We could hope. But if if we could push for it.
Yeah.
And you're saying to yourself, she's dreaming.
I just came out of 2020, and then I don't know. Police work is a little.
It's not popular right now.
It's not too popular right now. So it's not going to get the politicians a dollar
until you get mugged yourself.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. When it starts,
which happened to some
state
senator in Michigan or Minnesota or something. She
suddenly
carjacked. She's like, we need to enforce the laws. Really? What a novel idea.
Right.
Any other questions? You've been wonderful. We so appreciate your taking the time.
Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
All right, then. I'll give it back to Mickey. Take care.
All right, thank you.